Hello, I am going to be focusing on second grade for this final project or exam because I was in a second grade practicum classroom this past semester and I loved second grade. I love the age, I love their enthusiasm for school and for learning, and I can really see myself teaching this grade in the future. So for this simulation, I am a second grade teacher with 25 students in my class, 10 ELL, 10 below grade level, 10 on grade level, and 5 above. I want to preface that saying I have a little bit of experience with distance learning because I am part of the teacher Instagram community, so I'm always watching their stories and seeing how they're staying connected with their students and how they're dealing with this crazy time, and also because I am a nanny back home for a 3-year-old boy, but also a 5-year-old girl who is in kindergarten, and I do all of her distance learning with her. Her parents find it completely overwhelming and find the workload to be ridiculous. So something that I want to do for my students is I don't want to overwhelm my students or their families or make them feel anxious because this is already a scary, anxious time. Instead, my goal is to provide my families and their students for opportunities to engage in authentic and meaningful learning activities at home. My activities are aimed to help them engage in these literacy activities, the reading and the writing, in a non-stressful way that enhances their education while they're at home. My biggest overarching goal is to maintain relationships with my students and keep connecting with them. In my classroom, we built a big community. They know they're loved and valued, and I want to know that I still love and value them and their work at home because I think that that will make it more meaningful. Because my class is so diverse, the activities that I have planned for them throughout the week serve as a baseline that they can work on and around to help them meet their specific learning goals and needs. And the biggest thing that I want to promote is for them to all continue to read at home for at least 20 minutes a day and to fill out a log. The log is just for my students to write down the date and what books they read on that date to help keep them accountable and encourage that they're reading at home. To help keep them motivated, every week on Seesaw, the app that I use in my classroom, I plan to write a post. What have you been reading this week? What are your favorite books? With questions around those to guide discussion. My students can comment, talk about their books they're reading, what they're liking, so that way they stay motivated to read at home and connected with their peers. All right, all of that being said, I'm going to dive into my standards and my week of lesson plans. I'm going to do the reading and writing together just because all of my activities go together because I want it to be inclusive. I don't want the work to be overwhelming but cohesive. So the reading and writing activities go together. My reading goal for second grade, or the standard I'm using, is 2.7. The student will expand vocabulary when reading. Focusing on D, discuss meanings of words and develop vocabulary by listening and reading a variety of text. And my writing goal is 2.12. The student will write stories, letters, and simple explanations, focusing on A, generate ideas before writing, and C, expand writing to include descriptive detail. So these are my two standards for the week. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to use Seesaw to relay everything to my students, the app that we use in our class beforehand. However, my school will have sent out packets, because that's what the majority of schools are doing, outlining a schedule of what the students should be doing every day, Monday through Friday. So all of my students will have the schedule, and it will include what to do if they do not have technology at home, which I will talk about, but I will also be using Seesaw. So the first thing that I will do on Monday is I will post a check-in video because I really loved how you use those for our literacy class. I found them so meaningful and it helped me feel connected and like you cared about what we were doing, and that's how I want my students to feel. I want them to know that I am still looking at their stuff, I am still thinking about them and caring about them, and what they do at home is meaningful and has a purpose. So in the video, I'll say hi and give them the plans for the week, what we're going to do, and get them excited and motivated to do their learning at home. Every week I'm going to start with a read aloud because I think reading out loud to students is great and it's fun. I'll hold up the book and I'll show them the pictures. And I thought about doing it where they can listen to me live, but then I thought maybe all families might not be able to work around the same time, so I just decided I'll post a video of me and then the families can watch it when works best with their schedules. So my read aloud for this week is called Max's Word by Kate Banks, and this is a picture book about a boy named Max, and he has two brothers, one who collects stamps and one who collects coins, and Max wants something to collect, so he starts collecting words. And he categorizes them all differently, and he starts building sentences, and then he starts building story. And I think that this book is very engaging and exciting, especially for a second grade audience. And I think that this book serves as a mentor text and will also get my students excited to search for words and to look for words and think about words while they're at home. So on Monday, I will send out that checkout video and post the read aloud video. And before I start reading, I'll show the cover and ask guiding questions. What do you think is going to happen? Just as I would as if I was reading it in the classroom. And I'll do the same thing when I read the book using fluency and exciting voices to keep my students engaged even while they're watching at home. And I'll tell them, bring your brother and sister along, or your parents, or anyone who wants to join. And then afterwards, I'm going to ask my students some questions about the reading, and I'll say, okay, pause and answer your question, or pause and think out loud, pause me, and then give them a second to think about it, and then I'll post the questions on Seesaw, and it won't be mandatory for them to respond, but I'll encourage them to. That way they can see what their peers had to say about the book, and we can stay connected. After listening to the book and answering the questions, the students will then create word lists in their reading notebooks to record new words that when they read and that they find, and words that they like. I'm going to encourage them to use the same categories that Max used in the book. The categories for his words were a list for small words, big words, words that make you feel good, words naming stuff you like to eat, words people say to you, words for your favorite color, and words you do not know. So I'm going to instruct my students that they have to have at least words that make you feel good, words you do not know, so they have to at least have those two, and then they can make lists for the rest of them, make their own list, or however many lists they would like to have in their reading notebook. So when they're reading for the 20 minutes every day and they find these words, they can put them into their notebooks. And then that is the activity for day 1. The reason that I made these 2 word lists mandatory for them to start collecting words in their reading notebooks is because, one, this is a scary time, so I think collecting words that make you feel good will just make the students feel good and encourage them to use those inspiring words and the words you don't know to help students recognize when they don't know words and to write them down so they can learn them. And then I'll encourage them to write as many other lists as they want. If they have fun, they can go on word hunts with their words, and I'll post little things like that in Seesaw, but that's the reason why those 2 word lists are mandatory for our activities this week. On Tuesday, my students will continue thinking about Max and his word lists and collections as they do their activity. So I will have compiled a featured word list from Max's collection, looking at his words throughout the story, and I will have posted them on Seesaw in boxes, and the students will be able to drag the boxes around and look at them. But I will also have all of those words in the boxes printed out on a sheet in the packet for students who do not have access. And then they will also have pictures that go with them. So for my ELL students, this will help them either on the screen or on, if they cut them out, that the way they have them to manipulate the words, because their activity for the day, my objective is for them to use as many of these words as they can and to write a story. They have to use at least 5 words, but they can write with as many words. So the goal is to look at all these words and make sense of them, have fun being able to move them around, and then use them to write a story. Their story has to have at least 8 sentences and use 5 of the words. So they will write it, and then they will take a picture of their writing and post it to Seesaw. And then it is optional, but they are encouraged to, after taking the picture, record themselves reading what they wrote and then post that to Seesaw. That way they can read their peers and they can stay connected. And this is something that my first graders in my practicum last year loved to do, would be to post and then record. So I know that second graders are totally able to do this. And that is Tuesday's activity. So it's the reading and then the writing their stories. And then also every day they're supposed to read for 20 minutes and add words to their list. And this activity is totally doable for my students who do not have technology at home. They just won't post their writing to Seesaw, but they'll still be able to move all the words around and write their stories using those words. On Wednesday, their activity is to continue their reading at home and adding to their word list. And then they're also going to have a writing prompt for the day. So their writing prompt is going to be write a short story about collecting something. Words, coins, and stamps would be example from the book about Max. And then I would ask questions like, what would you collect? Where and how would you collect these things? What would you do it with? What would you do with these things? And have my students write at least 8 sentences. Again, they would write it, post it to Seesaw, and if they wanted to, they could record themselves. So this is just giving my students and I would encourage them to use their words that they've been using their list. So continue reading and writing at home, giving them a purpose and keeping them motivated via Seesaw, which I think is a great tool for teachers to use because the teacher gets to see it first and then they check it before it's posted so you can check for everything. And then after you've said, yep, then everyone else can look at it. So all the other students and families. On Thursday, the activity for my students has them use the list of words that they've been creating throughout the week. Their challenge is to use at least one of the words from their did not know word list, and they can make more than one because I think some students might have fun with this activity. But what they're going to do is define the word and research it. They're going to find an antonym, a synonym, and how to use that word in a sentence. And then they're going to create their own sentence and their own slide, which I will post on Seesaw to teach their students, or their peers, about the word. And then if students do not have access to technology, they would have a sheet of paper with all the same stuff on Seesaw for them to complete at home. I got this idea from Mrs. Hudson Teaches. And this was what it would be like. I think this would be really fun and exciting for my students to do. And I can see some students wanting to do more than one of these. But just a way for them to get engaged with reading and writing at home and make it fun and purposeful, because I would take all of the ones for my students and make a big PowerPoint of all of them so that all of my students get to learn words from their peers. So that is Thursday's activity. And then again, my hope is that they continue to read every night and continue to add words to their list. Sorry, that was my dog, every day. And so on Friday, their activity is to add to their story from Tuesday, the one where they use the word cards from the Read Aloud book to make their own story. Their task for Friday is to go back to their story, to revise it, and to add to it to expand their thinking, to add more descriptive detail, and rewrite it to make it better, because they're in second grade and they're capable of making their writing better, which is something we worked on in our class. And then they will write that and they'll take a picture and post it to Seesaw. Again, optional, but encourage that they speak it on Seesaw so that we can listen to it. And then my goal would be to have a Zoom call on Friday, a live one where my entire class can get together. I would want to do the Zoom call at the end of the week. That way students know all week long that they get to share something at the end of the week to keep them motivated and encouraged to be able to share their best work with their teacher and their peers. My goal would be to give each student a small bit of time while all the other students are on mute listening to be able to share maybe their favorite new word that they learned or their favorite book. So something brief but exciting to keep them motivated throughout the week. I hope it was okay to describe all of my activities for the week together, not like separating the reading and writing, because I really wanted it all to be cohesive for my students. But to reiterate, my reading standard was 2.7. The student will expand vocabulary when reading, focusing on D, discuss meanings of words and develop vocabulary by listening and reading a variety of text. And my writing standard was 2.12. The student will write stories, letters, and simple explanations focusing on A, generate ideas before writing, and C, expand writing to include descriptive detail. So every activity that I plan for the week focuses on these two standards in a way where all of my students, my ELL, my on, my above, and my below grade level can use the activities as a baseline to meet where they are. My goal as an educator is also be available on Seesaw to answer questions from parents and from students. So that was my biggest thing in all my activities, is giving them resources to continue growing and learning at home and becoming more literate while not overwhelming them or making them feel anxious. So I hope I talked about those adequately enough to explain my idea. I was really excited to do this. And then I've talked about Seesaw throughout this whole video, but I love Seesaw and I think it is a great resource. And the reason that I would like to use it is because the teacher can check first and then post it, but it's a great way to keep the community going. We can post pictures, videos, we can comment on each other's assignments to keep that classroom community growing. And I already talked about why I wanted to do decided not to do live readings so that I could meet all of my family's schedules via the videos. And the Zoom call, that would be another thing I could do with the class for technology, just using it to enhance. It wouldn't be necessary, but it would be exciting for all my students to hop on for a little bit and be able to talk to each other about what they did during the week to keep them motivated. And then additionally, to keep my students motivated, what I think is really important is knowing that what they're doing at home is important and has a purpose, and me, their teacher, is looking at it, because the little girl that I nanny, she doesn't even think that her teacher is making the work for her. I'm always like, we have to do this for Miss Spencer, but she's like, but I don't see her anymore, like she doesn't look at this. And I want them to know that yes, we're not in school, but yes, I am still there checking in on them and checking on their work, making sure they're doing it. So that will motivate them, knowing that I'm watching it, or I'm watching them and I'm commenting and keeping the process, and they can see me in the videos that I post of the week. I think my goal when I created these activities were for all the activities not to be online the whole time, because children spend too much time online anyways. I wanted them to be able to step away from the computer and do all their activities on paper, or just reading, or just using Seesaw like as additional stuff, but to give them the opportunity to respond to each other via and stay connected via the technology. I think that they will be more motivated to do their work because they can see each other's work and respond to their peers and be able to communicate, because I still want that sense of community in our class, even if we are all separated. I want them to see me, which is why I would do the weekly check-in video on Monday posted, and then the Friday Zoom call, and know that I'm still there and I still care about them and their work. And I believe that this will encourage them to work hard and to share. I would also like to add that I did a lot of research to do this, and one thing that I got from a lot of teachers was to not throw too much at their way and too many resources, because that could overwhelm the students and the families. So I tried to keep it simple, just using Seesaw and the packets, especially for ELLs. I read that can be a lot for them, so I try to keep all the things similar to what we would have done in our class, and just providing them resources to keep learning at home in a way that meets their different schedules and busy lives. To sum up, my main goal was to help my students continue to feel as if they were in a community and they were supported and encouraged to learn and make authentic learning possible while at home and out of the classroom. So thank you for this assignment. It was really fun to plan and exciting and very worthwhile.